this early. I'm bringing you greetings currently from Florida, where I serve as the coordinator for tutoring services and outreach. My official title, though, is Coordinator of Academic Support Services, but I'm specifically responsible for overseeing the peer tutor program there. Um, the presentation that I'm going to give to you today, it's called The Six Principles, and I'm going to tie that into the Rowing Not Drifting strategic plan. And just as a reminder to everyone here, I am a candidate for the director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center here at the University of Northern Colorado. And the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center has a total of six principles. They are unity, education, social development, economics, security, and politics. So you're going to see me look down here just a little bit. And so my sincere apologies. I had to grab my laptop just to make sure I had my notes. And so I just have to be transparent with y'all because I am a very transparent person. And so I'm going to try to go to our next slide. Um, Before I dive in, actually, let me give you a little bit of not only how these principles resonate with me, but a little bit about me and my history and me growing up. So I was raised in a small town. I'm from a small town in Texas, and I also had a small farm as well. We have property that we've lived on in my family for now over 100 years. I've lived next door to my grandmother, and so family and in terms of unity, that is something that it's really ingrained in my DNA. I was taught to work hard, to stand up for myself, and to also get a good education. And since working hard was something that I was good at, I worked hard at getting a good education. Throughout my younger years, I was active in anything from piano, and then that was something I did outside of school. In addition to that, I was involved in sports activities in school, and also a few more things in my community like Little League, baseball, softball, and some of those activities. So I guess it was no surprise to many of my classmates and my family when I became an active member of the student council in high school. And then I later served as actually the high school student body president. In high school, I organized a unity in the community event where we cleaned up an abandoned Black graveyard that brought some key community leaders to join us with actual equipment because we were there with like our rakes and things like that, imagine. And although we got a few weeds, it was nothing like an individual with a lawnmower coming through and then some other machinery as well. In college, I said that I was not going to get involved, yet I found myself starting an organization. I started a step team. I started a gospel choir. Plus, I was a student ambassador. I later served as president of my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. And nope, the involvement did not stop there. After undergraduate, I was introduced to the field of higher education. And because of my involvement, the idea of honestly going to college forever really did resonate with me. And once I was in grad school, I got involved in like our homecoming committee, started hosting events on campus and in the local community, and then got connected with our local radio station in Pensacola, Florida. So I told you all that to sum it up and say involvement has kept me connected, and being involved in the community that I've lived and worked in, not just on the campus, but also off the campus, is really a key part of my success and who I am today. So, to get started, I have to tell you about who Marcus Garvey is. And I cannot speak about the principles honestly without talking about who he is. He was a solid leader during his time. His voice was strong for Black nationalism and Black pride. I remember in my actual first round interview with the committee, I asked about why was the center named the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. However, I only asked because the strength that that name brings is so powerful. Garvey was known for being a great organizer who inspired Black pride around the globe and influenced powerful Black leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. He wanted to globally unify the African diaspora and started the organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, influencing over 2 million people and earning the name the Black Moses. Marcus Garvey was an organizer and influencer who believed in involvement and empowerment of Black people, which is why I come before you today as the candidate for the director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. So what I did want to do is just to provide what is a vision, just so it kind of provides some kind of like some context for the presentation. And so in terms of the vision, for this presentation base. This is not the official vision. I would say that the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center at UNC provides programming designed to strengthen the understanding of the Black and African diaspora. The center strives to enrich, empower, and advocate for faculty, staff, and students through educational initiatives, cultural events, and community involvement. I also want to state that when I have a vision, I go after it. I know I'm a small town girl, but I'm not afraid to go after what I want. I moved away to go to college. I have the experience of being a transfer student. I envision myself getting my master's degree as a first generation student. I've worked on air with a radio station. I've started my own podcast. And now I'm doing an even bigger thing by applying to be the director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. The way I've structured the presentation, just to ensure that I can share with you how these principles align with me, play from current slide. You'll see that the setup includes an actual definition for the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, how these connect with me, programs that come to mind, and then also an area in which it falls into the strategic plan. And I will be transparent and say that I do realize that a few of these may fall into other areas of the strategic plan and not just one. And so you will see that reflected on many of the slides. Now, the first principle, unity, resonates with me because it's the sense of coming together. What Merriam-Webster's definition says is the state of being united or joined as a whole. I truly enjoy honestly coming together and gathering everybody's expertise. And the way unity connects with me is it gives me that sense of belonging, that sense of coming together, that unity in the community. When I think of programs that come to mind, it really is mentor programs like faculty and staff. Programs that would mentor our students in the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center, ongoing success workshops that could be developed by students who are a part of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center, ongoing trainings as well. Those ongoing trainings would be for the student leaders. In addition to that, a coaching program. That coaching program can be a peer-to-peer coaching program. And then student org programs as well. Within each student organization, as well as within each Greek organization, they have their own programming. So ensuring that that programming is also incorporated within Unity. And then in terms of where it falls under the strategic plan, really students first. You know, the goal of UNC is to meet students where they are and to nurture their growth. These programs really allow that opportunity to meet students where they are and to nurture that growth. And also cultivate and provide leadership involvement and then advocacy opportunities for students. In terms of what that would also look like for UNC, and the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center is rebooting the podcast. I know that in my initial interview, the first one, we talked about the podcasting experience that I brought to the position, but also that Marcus Garvey did attempt a podcast and it's just on pause. So just kind of getting back together to see if that's something that students would like to reboot. The next principle that resonates with me is economics and politics. I put these together, but I also put each definition under there as well. So you'll see it says a social science concerned with production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. That's economics. And then the art or science of government. That is the definition of politics. The way this connects with me is this is the business of it all. You know, this is the governance from the state and even the institutional lobbyists to faculty and staff associations within the university. I think about budget. I think about partnerships as well, because anytime, you know, a lot of times an entity is giving you funding or money, that is really a true partnership. I think about grants, anything from TRIO grants, but also technical grants. Also maybe grants that can be independent from like maybe a local, let's say, credit union that's maybe giving away grants. I think local businesses, and I also think about the Chamber of Commerce. In terms of committees and programs that really come to mind is Black Faculty and Staff Associations, staff senates, come to mind as well. I've been a member of staff senate at the University of West Florida, and it led me to being accepted into the lead staff training program. And that's a program that brought in key campus leaders, like, for example, the provost, the campus president. And we were able to have like intimate conversations with them about campus topics. We were ultimately able to create a campus car wash that still does exist today. But we truly did have the ear of leadership, but sometimes those things have to be formed directly from either a department entity or an institutional entity. I've also served as the treasurer for the Black Faculty and Staff Association at the University of Central Florida. So that was definitely a learning experience that I've had, but it really gave me an opportunity to not just know the staff, but also the faculty, on campus. And in terms of how this fits into the strategic plan, I'd say enhance and invest, and then empower and inclusivity. In empower and inclusivity, one of the bullet says engage in robust discussions and share experiences, viewpoints, and ideas in respectful ways. And when I see many of the committee and programs that you see in front of you, like the MLK March, financial literacy, Student Government Association, all of those things just remind me of the business of it, yes, but the importance of having discussions around some of these potential, yes, challenging topics. So the next one that I have is actually education. I'm a first generation student and a graduate student, so education is very important to me. And as I said earlier, I work hard to get a good education. I believe in the holistic approach, and that includes partnering with other departments and then also offices. The Merriam-Webster's definition defines education as the action or the process of educating or being educated. As you can tell, I wanted to bullet out the fact that, yes, I am a first generation college student, excuse me. I've been a transfer student. I've been an out of state student. I am all about reaching higher. That is one of the reasons why I started the Late Night Hype podcast. Yes, to encourage students to listen to reach higher and continue to go on with their career, and also to connect with faculty, staff, and students on campus. It really served as a way to bring all of us together. In addition to that, I believe that mentorship is important. That's what it means to me. I was sharing with the committee earlier that one of my mentors, she's a diversity trainer. Her name is Dr. LaSharon Wiley, and she really had a positive impact on me. And she's the reason why I got into the field really of diversity, and that mentorship and some of those conversations that I had with her that really pulled me onto the side of diversity reminded me that, if I want to be the change in the world, I have to be the change that I want to see in the world. And so I hold myself accountable to that standard. I also see educating people through diversity workshops. So that's workshops about social justice. I've had the privilege of working with the Office of Social Justice and Advocacy here at the University of Central Florida. And we've put on about 11 or so diversity workshops. Half of them I've done in person, half of them I've also done in the virtual environment. But when it comes to the diversity workshops overall, they really are a big help to the institution, and it gives us an opportunity to have some very educational conversations around the topic of, diversity, because diversity is not just about race. There's all different things that fall under the line of, diversity. So programs that come to mind when I think of education, I think specifically of partnerships as well. I still keep that in mind. Also, mentor programs with faculty and staff, the MLK Day of Service, success workshops, diversity workshops, which I also put on there what connects with me, service projects as well, doing some sort of a ongoing maybe community service project with a local business. In addition to that, ongoing trainings for students in the department. I currently provide training for tutors, and it's up to maybe about 40. Sometimes it's been actually about 45 or so tutors and graduate assistants like each semester. And every month we have a training. And in that training, we learn something that's related to the curriculum for CRLA, which is the certification that we're under. So we use that curriculum really to guide our tutors through being more confident in their tutoring, and then also engaging, whether they're in person or also whether they're virtual, and now everything is actually hybrid. So now they have to be more comfortable doing both, managing that Zoom link, right? And then also managing those students who might be, in person. And it is something that we're still evolving and developing to do. In terms of the strategic plan and where education falls, innovate and create, and then students first as well, and then enhance and invest. In terms of innovate and create, I'd say the way that registered with me is we want to deliver a quality student experience through UNC's personalized approach to instruction. And I think that having a curriculum to really follow, to guide students, to also have them to look forward to something, I think that that is going to be it's very helpful to students. It gives them a guide. It also gives the manager or individual who's overseeing them a guide to follow. And it gives them something, I think, to look forward to as well. At the end of each semester, we have the first 2 semesters as an individual tutors with us. They are given a certificate. So they do get a certificate for attending. It's about maybe 10 to 12 hours of trainings throughout the semester and additional curriculum that goes along with that we have on our web courses. So the next one is social development and security. So social development, according to Merriam-Webster's definition, is improving the well-being of every individual in society so they can reach their full potential. In terms of how they define security, it's the quality or state of being secure. For example, freedom from danger and anxiety. The way this connected with me is it just made me think about improving the quality of life of individuals and human beings. It reminded me as well about the fact that I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. And so every human being matters. Also safety as well. We have a lot of things that's been going on specifically in our society as it relates to our justice system and the injustices that still exist within those systems. And so I think it's important to maybe potentially partner up with maybe the campus police and talk about maybe some things that we can do to ensure that students at UNC feel very confident in the policing system there. I think, when we look at things on like a large scale and like big, and we think about it on a national level and you think about trying to fix it, you can go crazy. But when you think about what you can do locally, what you can do right in your backyard, right at home, that local impact that you can have, to me, is way more you're way more able to get that than what you would if you were trying to do something like on the national level. So, and it's not that it can't be done, but if you're going to start somewhere, you might as well start at home. So when the programs that come to mind when I think about safety, security, social development, a safe walk program within that social development, if we're caring about human beings, we got to care about their mental health, their self-care, their physical health. So I thought about, and this is just an idea of some sort of a Marcus Garvey 5K, for example, teaming up with the counseling center. I know that there's already a collaboration with them, teaming up just to ensure that, there's some individuals who are very cognizant of the needs of our Black students on campus. In addition to that, also self-care, defining what that looks like. That looks different for everybody. I know that sometimes we want to look on the gram and see, people are at the beach or they're on vacation or whatever the case may be, but that may not be your self-care. Your self-care might be, sitting in a room and listening to jazz. Maybe your self-care is watching a play. Maybe it's actually resting and sleeping, right? But everybody's self-care looks different. In terms of the strategic plan, connect and celebrate, it falls under innovate and create, and then also students first. And I think partnering with maybe local and like regional organizations to deliver that educational experience as well, about safety and security, and potentially going, I'd say, even into cybersecurity as well. So I know that's a bit of a stretch, but even cybersecurity can be included in that security. So thank y'all so much. That concludes my 6 principles, and then how they resonate with me, and then how I would be able to use that to interact with the community here at the University of Northern Colorado.
Thank you. So now we will have time for open questions from the community. You can either raise your hand to ask a question, or you can put it in the chat and I can read it for you. So we will go ahead and open it up for questions. And let's not go at once. All right, so Blaine, I'm actually going to ask you to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to Patricia. And if you would ask your question, that'd be great.
Sure. Good morning, Patricia. I apologize for the video off and the mute. That's not usually my MO, but I've got an electrician in the house underneath me that's installing a new circuit run and it's making a ton of noise.
Oh, no.
So it's good that they're installing an electric car charger. So I'm super excited about that.
Good.
My name is Blaine Nickerson. I'm an associate vice president for administration, and my main role at UNC for the last year plus has been overseeing our COVID response. My question for you is, what excites you about UNC? Tell us why you want to be a Bear.
So I was saying this to the committee earlier, but when I honestly saw the position, I just immediately thought, oh my gosh, this is what I'm already doing. I'm just not getting paid for it. And so I really did enjoy the idea of also working specifically with students of the Black and African diaspora. In addition to that, I think also the small town feel, I can honestly say that too. I'm a small town girl. And so the idea of being back in more of a smaller community, that does excite me. In addition to that, the state of Colorado, that also excites me as well. Colorado is a beautiful state. I've had an opportunity to visit now for a couple of times. And so I really do enjoy that. But if you're asking me what initially did, it was the position. When I read the job description on higheredjobs.com, I was like, oh, I'm already doing this. And so I definitely can see myself in the role and doing it. So that's what excites me overall, Blaine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Tuck. I'm a Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs. I really enjoyed your presentation. I love how you wove together your personal life and then your professional kind of goals and the things you've done. So I'm looking at your education. I'm wondering, how did the disciplines that you studied in, say, for your bachelor's and master's and associates, how did that affect who you've become today?
So I have this thing about marrying my love for like education and entertainment to do something called edutainment. And, you know, some people may not be familiar with it, but it was one of the things that I remember getting a theater scholarship. So my undergrad is in theater. And my high school theater director was like, you know, Patricia, you are about to go off to college. You're about to be involved in theater. You know, why are you still trying to be student body president? Why are you still trying to be, you know, like this? And I'm like, I don't know. But it was always something that I had to be involved in the educational spectrum, but still have that, you know, outside feel of like either being involved in something outside of just the school or the campus. So that's one of the reasons why I think, you know, just overall, my undergraduate degree, it is just the perfect marriage for my graduate degree. I don't think I would have had the same experience had I gotten my master's degree, for example, in theater again. I also think it brings a different personality to the field of higher education, especially on the side of academic affairs. And I say that just because on the side of student involvement, for example, I feel like there's a lot of big personalities and just, you know, a lot of people that's about programming, et cetera. But there's not a lot of people that have that programming experience and then they take that over to academic affairs. And so I feel like I've been able to also marry it indirectly in that way by taking some of my skills that I've learned from the field of the Office of Student Involvement, being involved as well. Also reservations, also being a local radio personality as well. I took all of those things, I feel, and like it just added to, I feel, my position. So overall, I really do enjoy working with students and they really inspire me more than I probably could ever inspire them. So
excellent, thank you.
Hi, Patricia.
I know you.
Yes, you do. I know, it's been a decade. Oh my goodness. So good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Stephen Loveless, I serve as the director of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. Go UW, our Pensacola connection. I love it.
Yes, back in the blue though too, you know.
I know, trying. I appreciate that so much. I cannot believe it when I saw your name. Anyway, I want to stay on task here, and I wanted to ask you just how do you see meeting the needs of students kind of at the intersection who hold different identities, particularly like, I serve as the director of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. So students who have diverse gender and sexual orientations and who also are Black or people of color identified. So like, how do you work to meet the needs of folks who have several marginalized identities?
Well, first thing is I would, I have that, I'm bisexual. And so I actually have a partner and she is a female. And so I said all that to say, I can definitely talk to them about my personal experience, but the truth is I wouldn't even say that while it's my experience, yes, I wouldn't say that it's my area of expertise. So Stephen, to be transparent, I'd have to reach back out to you as well. I would refer them to you, and then also help to guide them to any other individual that I thought maybe would serve as a good, mentor towards them. I also would like to add on there that I think, and this is only because I've had an opportunity to work with the Office of Diversity on the UCF campus, and there's an opportunity there for us to be co-presenters for like a workshop and create something from scratch, so then we can help to meet that need in a different way, not just like in our office talking to the student, but also have like a workshop, and then other students who might also have that same intersectionality challenge could also attend that workshop as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. Thank you.
Let's not be shy.
Hey, Patricia. My name is Morgan Diaz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the leadership coordinator for our Stryker Institute for Leadership Development, and I also work within our collective in the Center for Women's and Gender Equity. I really resonated with your desire for partnerships, both on campus and in the community, and just your ideas for programming and things like that. And so I was wondering if you could share more of what goes into building connections, like what's your kind of go-to in building relationships and making those partnerships for programmatic growth and things like that.
I'd say to start off by, part of it is I think personality. Truthfully, like I do love people, like I genuinely do. So when I meet someone, I'm truly interested in who they are, what they're about, what they do. I have a way of just kind of gauging either interest or gauging things that I may not be as strong in another individual. And so with that, I try to keep that in mind, to not just have them help me with, say, ask Stephen to do a workshop with me, but also maybe to let Stephen know about a grant that's going on for the LGBTQ plus community so that he could apply for it for his department, right? So also just trying to also be that individual too. When I help out other people, honestly, it just kind of, it's a trickle down effect, and other people just automatically want to help me as well. I also do things like start podcasts. And just in case you don't know what a podcast is, it's very similar to radio. And you can set it up where you have individuals that come on and you interview them. And so when you have to ask people to come on to like your show or to like a podcast or something like that, it really also gives you a chance to get to know people. Also, I just so happen to be I guess a little confident, because I wouldn't say that I'm always the most confident, but confident in the field of speaking. While it seems like many people don't always feel that way in terms of being confident in the field of speaking. And because of that, they do admire, I think, that about me. And when they come onto the podcast, I want them to come onto the podcast, I explain that to them, like, hey, I don't consider you to be like the expert. These are the questions I'm going to give to you in advance. And so I just try to like talk them through that process so they feel more comfortable coming onto the show. So that is a way that I connect. I also am involved, so I've said that a lot, but I have been involved in the UCF community by being a part of the Black Faculty and Staff Association. I currently serve as an advisor for the National Society of Black Engineers. I currently serve as a host for the National College Learning Center Association podcast. It's called NCLCA Today. And so all of those are different entities, two which is on the main UCF campus, and then one which is through a national organization which is not affiliated with the institution. Even with the Late Night Hype podcast, although it's on pause, that has been something as well that's allowed me to, connect with not just the students on campus, but also faculty and staff. And I'm going to try to make this a little short, but the podcasting caught the attention of our chemistry department, and they actually we did a sample script, and we did a pilot sort of a sample of a podcast for their department, and it did not go through. So we never ended up following through with it. But if it wasn't for that podcasting that I was doing, that they saw that I was doing with students on campus, I don't think they would have recognized that and then asked me to do a sample podcast for them. So with that being said, those are some of the ways. I'm persistent. So that means if somebody tells me no, I'm like, okay, it's probably no today. So I'll come back another day and follow up about it. Or maybe this is not the time. So maybe this semester is not it, but maybe in the summer semester, we can talk about it again. Or budget is not there this fiscal year, but we can keep it on the list that says the wish list, and we can bring that back on in the future. And so I say that just to say I am a pretty persistent person, but I think that that's also coupled with my love for people. Some of it is just personality. And then I think it's just the fact that I have that sort of theater background that makes me a little bit more confident, I think, in creating those podcasts and programs that kind of force people to have to talk to me in a way.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you, Morgan.
I'm going to go ahead. Good morning, Patricia. My name is Renee Welch. I'm the director of the Center for Career Readiness, and I use she and her pronouns. Thanks for being with us today.
Nice to meet you, Renee.
My question is, you're interviewing in a virtual landscape for a gig that would exist in a different place. And I'm wondering, what do you need to know about us? And what would you be seeking, like in an appraisal of this job, if you were on campus that you're not getting an assessment of because this is a virtual interview?
Renee, if you don't mind, I am going to ask you to repeat the question.
Please, of course. So it's kind of a weird question. I'm curious, like if you were to be on an on-campus interview, my goal would be that you would get a realistic appraisal of the job, that you'd be able to like see the Garvey, you'd be able to like feel campus or kind of assess if this is going to be the right place for you. And I'm wondering, what do you need to know about the place, the people, the gig that you cannot see because it's happening in a virtual environment? And does that?
Yes. And so no, great question. And so thank you for repeating it as well, Renee. I would say that one, I'm an in-person person. So I can't admit to you that when it comes to the transition to do things virtually, my spirit had to get it together because the virtual environment is not something that is that I was, and this is no excuse, but that I was trained on to do. So I'm not trained to like manage, for example, like in the virtual environment. I do a good job. I don't want to make it seem like I don't. I do, but I'm a people person. My personality is very extroverted. So it was a shift for me, y'all, when we ended up doing everything, online. So when it comes to in person, I do know that I would have been able to, yes, like fill the Marcus Garvey Center. But in terms of, I guess, like questions that I would ask would just be, what was the culture, of the the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center prior to us going into the pandemic. And it also leads more into my presentation with the students. So there's a student presentation that I'm doing after this. And I talked to them about ways in which I would interact with them in the first like 90 days. And it would take also me, getting to know the student leaders, because, student leaders rotate in and out as well. And so I think that's also, that's a great question. And I would probably ask y'all overall, what was the climate of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center prior to the pandemic? And then sort of what ways can the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center work with your office? And if you do come to the student presentation, you're going to see this, because I do answer the way I would interact with y'all if I were to get the job. So I would go on basically like a little bit of a tour. But back to my question of like, what was the culture of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center prior to the pandemic? And then I'm going to ask another quick question. Renee, how can the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center, I guess, work better or more in line potentially with your office?
Of course. For that, Patricia, I think it is assessing the needs of your students related to exploring careers and occupations that students may not be able to see. So many of our students are first generation college students. So how might we help students discover occupations that they might be able to pursue once they have earned their bachelor's degree? How do we help them get experience? So opportunities to try on the types of positions that they might be interested in. And then any type of support that we might be able to provide your students to actually go about obtaining those positions that they are interested in. So we, as a division of student affairs, are working on developing a curriculum that we will all be using for how we're supporting our students. And it's seeming like career will be an aspect of that curriculum. So that will be evolving, I think, over time. And then specifically, what are the unique needs of the students that you serve in relation to their identities? And how does that impact the way in which we approach topics of career to meet the specific needs of your students? We can't separate identities from career, and knowing that the world of work is sort of based upon concepts that don't include all students all the time. So it would be working with you to, I think, to figure out the right approach to support the needs of your students related to career.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joel or Joel, I'm sorry, I think you unmuted yourself and then I started talking.
Yes, so Joel Orozco Almeida, I use he, him pronouns. I serve as the Associate Director for the Cesar Chavez Cultural Center. Not to take away from Renee's question, and maybe we can definitely talk about other ways about the culture piece, but I do have a separate question, if that's okay to ask. To give you a little bit of context, I'm also a doctoral student, so I feel like I'm doing reflections like on a daily basis. And one of the things that I've been pondering or thinking about is around the climate around Black Lives Matter and how are we showing up or not showing up for students. So I'm just curious to hear what have you learned about yourself throughout this whole entire movement that has been happening, and I'm curious to hear how would you incorporate that learning into the position as a director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. So kind of like a two-part question.
Right, and hopefully I will answer the question. So if I don't, call me out, okay? But I do want to kind of start off by saying I remember, I think it was summer 2016 actually, when I can say that I experienced seeing on Facebook the young man actually die on Facebook Live. And so to me, that was just a very a sad tragedy. And it was not that far from the Pulse tragedy that happened specifically in Orlando. So there was the Pulse incident, and then like it wasn't long later that Philando Castillo, I believe it was, who was the one who was seen live, who had passed away. And so many of our students, our Black students, as well as our LGBTQ plus community, was just very, like it was a lot. It was just a lot, it seemed like, going on. Luckily, we had counseling services. We have a 24-hour victims hotline at UCF. And so the victims hotline was available, and there were counselors that were on site on that Sunday, basically the same morning that the Pulse incident happened, for students to speak to counseling. They offered that same service as well for the Black Lives Matter movement for students. And in addition to that, our president, within that, I'd say within a month or so, along with our Black Student Union, as well as a few other very prominent Black student organizations on campus, they came together and they basically they declared that Black Lives Matter. Our president at the time declared that Black Lives Matter. And I think for our Black students on campus, that was a start to just acknowledging that it's important that we know that the students on our campus that are Black know that UCF cares about them. So for me, it will really be talking to, leadership to understand that it isn't enough just coming from the director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. It's not enough just coming from, the provost. It's not enough just coming from one area. It really is all of our responsibility as it relates to making students feel safe on campus. And when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that a lot of people are just not familiar with it, and they put it in a category of being negative if they're not familiar. But I think that's what we do all the time when we're unfamiliar with something, or we're scared of it, or we're not as versed on it. We kind of put it in this category of fear. But I think it's just a matter of educating ourselves about the movement and what it's there for. And I talked about this in my first interview when it came to voting. It wasn't that long ago that we got an opportunity to vote. That was 51, 52 so years ago. So it was not that long ago. So there's just a lot of things that we probably thought had changed, but unfortunately they haven't. And part of it is because of the history that we have and the social inequalities that just continue to be here in our country. And so for me, how I would show up for that in the context of as being the director of the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center is hosting conversations around the topic, partnering with our counseling services, because to me, this is not just a surface issue of just conversations. We have to go deeper than that. This is really a humanity issue and a challenge. If you know the history, of course, of slavery, it's been around for over 400 years. And so I said that to say Black people in general have really suffered just because of the mentality that the world has specifically around Black individuals and individuals of the Black and African diaspora. And so I think one of the things when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement is just getting everybody on board, specifically leadership, to have some of those hard conversations, to educate people about what it's really about, and really to test some of the conversations that are really untrue about the reason why Black Lives Matter. And it's unfortunate that we have to explain it that way and say, oh, Black Lives Matter, but it really is not a movement to be intimidating to anyone. It's just a reminder, just that Black lives matter.
Thank you.
A question that I fear it's I suspect it's my listening, but I'm curious. Let me back up. My name is Stephanie Torres. I'm the AVP for Student Academic Success. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Great presentation. Really nice to meet you. I have some teammates who will love your references to podcasts. See some great partnership opportunities. I'm responsible for undergraduate advising and have support services, work with Shawana, our tutorial services and those sort of things. Pre-COVID, pre-job kind of adjustment, I would spend 2 days or so a week over in the Garvey. So I think that the Marcus Garvey's climate, the experience there, to kind of go back to one of your questions, is that it is a place a place that students saw as a second home. And so I've been thinking about, my question for you, because I just don't know, is what your experience is with freestanding cultural centers that are houses. There's this added level of responsibility. I was thinking about, I've never had a job where I'm also responsible to maintain a physical house that is open more than 8 to 5, in addition to all the other things. So I'm just curious if you have experience with that, if you've thought about what that might look like. It's maintaining a house, keeping staff and student, you know, there's got to be someone in there all the time.
Yes.
And then also everything else, you know, can you be on 80 different meetings? Can you also be available for every individual student? And so I think it is the work of my colleagues in these roles is some of the most important and most difficult, and in my opinion, most under-resourced. So I'm just curious what your experiences are with that from your own campuses in terms of even freestanding cultural centers.
Okay. I will go to the component of a freestanding house and being responsible for the upkeep and those details. While right now we're in a building, we have the luxury of being in a building that's with everyone, that's really overall, I say campus policed. I'd say locked, thing like that. So the responsibility isn't on the departments. But I did work in reservations as a graduate assistant. And so I had an opportunity in that position to really detail building responsibilities, how to have like a building manager, for example, who just goes around and do different checklists. So we're creating a checklist for all the things that need to be either checked on a consistent basis, something like that. But having someone to either assist with that, or if that person is me, having it on my calendar on a rotating basis so that I can ensure that those things are done. Of course, there's also going to be things that just actually come up. And just to be transparent, I work at one of the largest institutions right now in the United States. And so with that being said, in terms of the numbers and the amount of responsibility and the students, I manage now 40 or so students on average each semester. I also have 3 graduate assistants as well. In addition to that, during our study union event that is hosted every fall and spring semester, it is where we take all of our tutoring sessions from tutoring and supplemental instruction. It's about 80, sometimes 90 sessions, and we move them into the virtual world. And they are, we call it like our review paradise. And so during that period of time, I'm managing sometimes up to maybe 100 or so students at a time, but that is only during the fall and spring, sort of like the last 2 weeks of the semester, essentially. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm managing that many students at once all the time, but typically I have around 40 students. We're doing monthly trainings. So in terms of, I feel like the traffic, I'm not intimidated by the traffic when I work at an institution, have worked at an institution like UCF. When it comes to the spacing, though, I will say that will be something that I would have to learn a little bit more, because although I have the experience from working with like reservations, for example, some of the details of it, I still would have to learn, especially if it's a freestanding house. I would also have to understand what the operation system is on campus. Is it something that is coming out of a budget that's within our department, or is it something that is coming out of the, division's budget? So that would be something that I would, have to either adapt to or definitely learn. In terms of, the amount of students, I know that one of the things as well is to the Greeks NPHC fall under the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center. And yes, I am a member of a NPHC organization, Delta Sigma Theta. So I do understand how many of the Greek organizations, especially NPHC, I'll say that. I understand how NPHC is governed as a whole. So I know and understand those rules and regulations, as well as the ones that specifically align with my particular sorority as well. I'm not sure, Stephanie, did that answer for the most part your question, you think?
Sure, since it was layered and woven in with statements, and I was just curious what your thoughts were about that, because I think it's a cool opportunity, and there's some complexities there. I guess a follow-up to that, and thank you so much for what you've shared, and Sounds similar to what our Director of Tutorial Services has to do. So I'm familiar with the magic that you create and to have a peer tutoring program. Not all the students that you're serving certainly are supporting, or your target audience are going to show up at the physical house, and so what are your thoughts on how to connect with students who may not stop by the center, but certainly could benefit from the community?
I'd say now that we have Zoom, definitely providing that Zoom link opportunity for students to drop in. I'm also a talker. Y'all can probably already tell that. So I don't mind doing a calling campaign. Like, I am not ashamed. I actually would prefer to talk to you than text you anyway. But since you want to text, I'll text because I'm trying to conform to you. But at the end of the day, I don't mind calling a student on the phone, leaving them a message. But for me, it's really that personal touch. And especially when you have a specific student population, I know what my student population is. So I believe that it will be my responsibility to make sure that they know what's going on at the cultural center, that they understand what the resources that are available for them, but also that we're here and we want them to stop by. So if that means I got to throw in some incentives, like as many, when you come through a total of 10 times, this will get you a mark, and then we'll put you in a bag for a free iPad. I know I'm being very ambitious right now, but some sort of incentive program to just, let them know that we are here for them. I've attended predominantly white institutions. I went to Texas A&M University Commerce. My junior college, Long Morris College, it was a predominantly white institution. However, they specifically did serve students with learning disabilities. And so they were very inclusive in that capacity. I attended the University of West Florida as well, predominantly white institution. I work at the University of Central Florida, and we actually are now officially a Hispanic serving institution. But still, when we were designated with that Hispanic serving institution, many of our Black students were like, hey, what's going to happen with us? How can we make sure that we're included? And so one of the things about UNC that I don't realize that y'all know probably at other campuses is that not everybody has a Black cultural center. Right. And so that is a privilege, I feel like, that you have actually on your campus that many campuses don't have. And so with that being so specific to those students who are Black or of the African diaspora, for me, I would take that on as my responsibility to make sure that students knew. And that would include, yes, an incentive. Yes, it can also include a workshop campaign where we go to different offices and share with them what we also do, connecting with campus partners and meeting with them. I said that I was going to do a campaign where I go to different offices that are some targeted, some shared with me maybe by my supervisor or individuals that I go to along the route to meet them. But I will basically meet with them so that we can determine, what is the best solution? What are the best programs that we can have? How can we work together? But specifically that my students know, hey, the Marcus Garvey Cultural Center is here for you. And I can call them on the phone, however I need to reach them, beep them, I can do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Any other questions? I'm trying to make sure I can give Patricia a break before the student forum, so. Let me check the other screen, see if there's any unmuted folks there. Well, I just want to say thank you to the UNC community for showing up and participating today. It warms my heart to see so many of you here on the call, so thank you. And it's just beautiful to see that it is definitely representative of the full campus community and not just a pocket. So we have student affairs and academic affairs participating, so thank you. So at this time, Patricia, if there's any final thoughts, and then we will say farewell and give you a break.
Well, I want to just just say thank y'all again for everybody for being here and to interview me in regards to this position. Just being here for the interview really is special to me. I appreciate it. I feel like this is definitely the next step for me in my career. And if there's any way, if I do get the position that I can help out in any way, I will be sure to reach out to y'all. So thank y'all again for being here and have a fantastic day. Go Bears.
Thank you, everyone.